Hi, everyone. So it's just me. My name is Elisa. The research I'm presenting was carried out in collaboration with the Rijksmuseum. It started in 2017 as my bachelor thesis and my internship at the Rijksmuseum. My task was to find a conservation concept for a collection of fire-damaged albumen prints, which is known as the Baudin collection, and it contains unique photographs documenting Japan during the late 19th century. The developed conservation method was later applied and adjusted by the conservators from the Rijksmuseum, my co-authors, namely Rosina Herrera, Martin Jürgens, Lenia Fernandez, and Magdalena Pelko. I would like to give an overview of the talk. I will start with a background on the Baudin collection and explain conservation goals. Then I give an insight into the development of the treatment, which is a little research on the characteristics of the burnt material and tests for treatment. I will then present the actual developed method step by step and show some results. To the end, I will present an analytical research to detect lost image information with infrared and XRF, and I will finish with our conclusions. The collection is attributed to the brothers Antoine and Albert Baudin. Antoine was a Dutch medical scientist, you can see them here, following his brother to Japan in 1861 to teach at a medical school and to run a hospital in Nagasaki. The brothers collected prints from professional photographers such as Felice Beato. And Antoine was the one who practiced photography himself in his free time. He used to take photos of friends and visitors or his students, as well as from landscapes around Nagasaki. He even had a little wooden studio that he used for portraits, which you can see here in the group picture. The little studio can be recognized in other photographs as well. For example, in this one, a portrait of two samurai. In the corner, you can see the curtain, which is the same as in the left print. Most of the photographs in the collection of the Rijksmuseum were taken by Antoine and are from around 1865. The photographs give a rare glimpse of Japan's society and the country at the end of the 19th century. They were made during an important historical period in Japan at a time during which the country opened its borders after 200 years of national seclusion. For a long time, the only contact to the West was the trade relations with the Netherlands, which was restricted to the Bay of Nagasaki. You can see the bay here in this panoramic print. This object is actually a fragment of a much bigger object, so keep this one in mind because I will come back to it later. There are some clues indicating that the photographs were mounted in albums before, such as fiber residues from mounting or folds like this one, you can see here. In fact, it is known that when Antoine and his brother returned to the Netherlands in the 1870s, they brought some albums with them. So they were kept in the family for a long time, but sadly, in 1985, many of the photographs were damaged during a house fire. In 2016, the family donated 121 single photographs to the Rijksmuseum, and 28 of these show signs of fire damage. Another part of the Baudin collection is held by the Nagasaki University Library today, in which most of the photographs are still mounted in albums. The previous shown pictures, as well as this one, give an insight into the extent of the fire damage. On many, the charred material is already broken off and lost, but a few prints, such as this one, show very fragile edges. Especially those could hardly be handled without the risk of further damage and losses. Therefore, my goals were to enable a long-term preservation in the storage facilities of the museum, gain safe handling of the prints for access in the museum print room, and digitization for online viewing. And further, 3 prints needed to be treated for the upcoming exhibition New Realities in 2017. So a method to consolidate the fragile fragile burned areas was urgently needed. Before I continue with the tests, I'd like to explain how mock-ups were made. Loose albumen prints from the late 19th century were available, which were burned by holding them for a few seconds directly in contact with a hot plate. With this method, mock-ups with charred edges could be produced that appeared very similar to the damage of the originals. The sample material was used in all of the tests. Before testing possible treatments, I wanted to know what happens with the albumen print when exposed to extreme heat. The main material is paper. It is the carry-on which a very thin layer of egg white solution is coated on. This is the binder that holds the silver particles, giving the photographic image. You see here a simple floating test with a mock-up. It demonstrates the very different behavior of the burned area and the intact area towards water. You can see the burnt material is not curling up in the test. Then I did a simple spot test with water in the charred area. With a drop, when the drop is placed, the water is soaked in immediately. My explanation is that the material must be porous due to a very far advanced destruction of the material. The water spot test was carried out empirical in a wider range, which gave a more detailed image of the altered properties. My observation was that on both sides, the ability to absorb water is decreasing towards the charred edges, whereas the very charred material must be porous. So what happened to the material? During thermal degradation and combustion, many complex processes take place, including dehydration, depolymerization, and oxidation. For paper, the cellulose polymer is broken down into smaller units. Amorphic regions that can absorb water are affected first, which leaves a crystalline structure. This makes the paper less reactive to water and extremely brittle. For albumin, the protein is irreversibly changed as well. It is dehydrated and the primary structure is broken down. This results in a rigid and brittle material that has lost its property to be permeable for water. Understanding the altered characteristics of the material was helpful to define possible methods for treatment. The requirements for treatment were to consolidate the fragile charred material in order to prevent further losses, to gain abrasion resistance and regain strength and the ability to retain water. Further, it should be possible to reattach loose pieces. The test showed that water-based materials are not particularly suitable. In addition, it is recommended to avoid aqueous treatments on albumen prints, as it is known that the image layer is prone to cracking. Therefore, it should be gentle methods that use as little water as possible. I will now present a selection of what was tested. First, I tested the possibility of a consolidation. A preliminary test was done to observe the properties of the different consolidants regarding absorption and changing surface appearance. They were simply applied with a brush on the front. Here you see just some of the tested. Based on the preliminary, gelatin, isinglass, and Aquazol 200 were chosen for further testing with aerosol. Aquazol 200 turned out to be slightly easier to atomize than gelatin and isinglass, and it did not tend to condensate in the aerosol stream, probably due to the ethanol. To test the efficiency of the treatment, a simple test to evaluate abrasion resistance was carried out. A blotted paper was rubbed 10 times in a circular movement over a consolidated and a non-consolidated reference area. The effect was weak, but a light improvement could be determined. Based on the tests, I decided to include a consolidation with Aquazol 200 in the treatment of the originals. Aquazol is very plastic and has a hygroscopic nature. Therefore, it is also thought to bring strength, flexibility, and the ability to retain water. Further, I tested the possibility of lining. I'm presenting here a selection of what was tested. The lining with a remotion neighbor tissue allows the use of very little amount of water. It was tested with varying the ratio of traditional mixture of wheat starch paste and methylcellulose, and different methods for reactivation and applying. But this method did not meet the expectations. The use of too much water for reactivation caused cockling, which you see in the left picture. But with less water, the bond tend to be too weak or irregular. The picture on the right shows an extreme example. Testing several variations demonstrated that for this case, the lining method is not very reliable and too weak. The modified Dacron lining was tested as well to include a method that was in theory ruled out to be suitable because too much water is used. The tissue is pasted out with wheat starch paste on a polyester fabric called Dacron. The humidified photograph is lowered onto the lining tissue and the whole assembly is left for drying. The observation was that different stress ratio caused cockling, and the high amount of stress caused cracking in the burned area. And further, charred material was washed out and caused the formation of tight lines. This method proved well that the burned area and the non-affected area are reacting very different to water. Then a non-aqueous method was tested by simply brushing Clucil G in ethanol through the tissue. You see a before and after picture here where the tissue was applied only to the burned area. It had to be done very fast and precise because the adhesive dries very fast. But the adhesion was sufficient and the necessary strength could be achieved. With microscopic observations before and after, no visible alteration of the albumin surface could be determined. The reversibility was given as well by vaporizing the area with ethanol using a Gore-Tex. The tissue could be easily be taken off again. As this method showed very good results overall, it was chosen to be used on the originals. I will now continue to present the actual treatment steps that were applied on the fire-damaged prints of the Bordeaux collection. The first step is the consolidation of the charred material with a low concentration of Aquazol 200 using an ultrasonic mister. Each side was treated 4 to 5 times with drying time in between to prevent flooding the substrate. Second, the burnt area is further stabilized by brushing on a thin Japanese paper on the back with Clucil G 2% in isopropanol. Different from the test before, isopropanol instead of ethanol is used as it evaporates slower, which gives slightly more time for application. The lining tissue is prepared bigger than the area to be treated and its edges were feathered. In order to ensure safe handling, false margins are applied. This is done by attaching big strips of Japanese paper with feathered edges to the sides of the print. Then the edge of the lining tissue is adhered to the false margins, which you can see on the left picture, and loose pieces are attached on it, which is shown on the right. The last step is to mount the print in the folder. Here you see a print before mounting. When I started with the treatment in 2017, I mounted the prints in a folder with a Passepartout. One edge of the false margin was attached to the back cardboard with a paper strip. Oh, sorry. But over time, it turned out that the Passepartout caused cockling of the false margins. You can see the difference when comparing the right bottom picture to the left one. This was improved when, after my research, the treatment of the collection continued in 2020. Now the cover flap is without the Passepartout, and a non-woven polyester mesh is adhered to it, adhered to the cover. Further, a thicker Japanese paper, 8 grams instead of 5, is used for the false margins, and photo corners are used instead of attaching one side of the false margins. Here you see a condition before and after treatment. This is also one of the 3 prints which was shown in the exhibition New Realities at the Rijksmuseum 2017. During my internship, I was able to apply the method to 3 prints of the collection. Later, in 2022, the Rijksmuseum devoted an exhibition to the Baudin collection with the title Early Photographs of Japan. In preparation for this exhibition, several people worked on the conservation of the collection, including the remaining 25 fire-damaged objects. As a result, almost 50 photographs of the collection could be presented to the public. In this picture, you might recognize the fragment on the right from the beginning of my presentation. With the conservation, these 2 fragments could be rejoined, showing now the actual panoramic photograph that is about 91 centimeters wide and consists of 5 shots of the Nagasaki Bay. Now I would like to give an insight into a research that was done next to the conservation treatment. Based on the assumption that the silver image could not be destroyed in the fire, I wanted to investigate if it is possible to detect the image in the charred material. One analytical experiment I did was infrared reflectography by using an Osiris infrared camera. With infrared light, it was possible to enhance the visibility in the dark areas to a small degree. However, an image in the very charred material could not be detected. And in 2017, I tested XRF scanning as well. With an area mapping, it is possible to visualize the distribution of elements. You see measurements in a non-infected area here. The area mapping is showing the distribution of silver here, which is shown in black. The resolution is very low and the result is not 100% convincing. And mapping an area of this size required 70 measurements and took about 36 minutes. At the time, this was the best we could get. But it gave reason to continue this experiment, which is why in 2022, Martin Jürgens and Judith van der Brugge-Mulder made a new attempt and applied macro XRF scanning when it became available. And this gave a very nice result. With a new device, it is possible to get thousands of data points with a much higher resolution than before, and that can give us a detailed image of what was hidden in the charred material. Although the scanning area is much bigger than the ones from 2017, the scanning duration of 28 hours is still very long. Nevertheless, it is incredible how you can clearly see the faces now. Information that was thought to be lost could be made visible again. I'd like to finish the talk with conclusions. You see a timeline of the history of the Baudin collection. In 2017, the project started as my bachelor thesis and my internship at the museum. A treatment was developed and successfully applied to 3 fire-damaged photographs. But in fact, the work after that was done later was very essential, as other professionals were actually applying and testing the method. During this time, valuable experience and information was collected, including the successful research on the potential of the macro XRF scanning. With this collaborative effort, the method could be best possible improved, so that today we are at the point that we would like to share our results. And with this, I would like to thank everyone and finish with acknowledgements. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. Are there any questions? Well, as long as I can't see anyone, but maybe I have one. Do you think there will be an application for other burned material that is not photographic to make things visible in the burned areas, or how would you judge that?
Yes, I think it would be interesting to test it on other materials and on paper. Other paper objects.
Yeah, I can imagine there would be a lot of interest in that if people do things in a fire.
Yeah, maybe it's not so, the device is maybe not so available for everyone, but yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you so much for the brilliant lecture. So I have a question. The Clucel G in ethanol, the Swiper scent, did you say the tissue is easy to remove using alcohol in a Sympatex or Gore-Tex chamber?
Yes, I tested it with a Gore-Tex and a sandwich and tried to evaporate with alcohol, and then it was easy to take it off again, to peel it off again. Yeah.
Great, thanks.